Hi guys, so this is one of the exercises that I have in the book. You might have already read the book or you might be straight in the portal. So you can have access to this document whether it's in the book or whether it's in the PDF. This is probably like one of the, it's deep as, all right, I'm not going to lie to you. I do go more woo-woo than this, but this is pretty deep, all right? So removal of sales anxiety, probably my real motivation for the whole book was the fact that I suppose, like, if you think about what drives people, especially when people have gone through some shit in their lives, they just want to help others because they can imagine other people experiencing what they were experiencing, all right? So I suppose from my perspective, the fact that if you do read my book, like that, what there wasn't like creative writing. Literally, I was in a space going back about 2 years ago, whereby like I love sales because like I'm that type of person. Like, I just love trying to crack the code on something. And I think sales is such an amazing space for, discovery about yourself, about processes, systems, and all the rest of it. It's just a bottomless pit. And that really drives me. However, the anxiety that I was encountering whilst on the journey of becoming a better salesperson was almost like a duality between like I love this shit, but then like my life experience is like fucking not good. Excuse my language. I do use coarse language sometimes, but hopefully you can see past that. So yeah, I mean that the coffee shop that I was in, I was literally like getting leads coming through into my digital calendar, and I was like, this is I love sales. This is what I want to do. I don't want to be doing anything else. But like, it was the anxiety that was being created was really make my life experience not good to the extent where I just thought on offer that I was on, which really wasn't paying dividends because the marketing was just really against my value system. I just thought like I had enough, and I did go to James Sackle, who's one of the CEOs of Sales Sniper, the company that I work for, um, and I just said enough's enough, and then thankfully they said, look, you're valuable, stay as a coach, and that's kind of like put me in my spot today. But that experience then, and I'm from the people I speak to, I know that I'm probably not the only one that experiences sales anxiety to some degree. Although I probably was experiencing a little bit more than most people, and probably people are experiencing it to the same level that I was, should I say, or even leading a little bit more, which I don't really, which is not a good place to be. All right. So the work I did on myself, like I don't think there's any. I think I'm crossing fairly fresh territory here in terms of, you know, speaking about sales anxiety, and I didn't find any resources prior to me sorting it out myself as to how to manage it. So I'm guessing, as far as I know anyway, this is like fresh territory. This work I've done on myself. I'm documenting it so that other reps can, if they're prepared to put the work in, are able to overcome any sales anxiety that they're experiencing themselves. Okay, so this is kind of like it is possible for you to do it. You're just gonna have to think outside the box. You may have to be a little bit patient and do read between the lines on certain things as well. And it's taken very much from like my experience, okay, but like from the work I have done with my own clients who have experienced sales anxiety, they do see the relevance of the work or the way that I've described my process in their own lives. So I do feel like there's we're all the same essentially, aren't we, in terms of how we're made up, etc. It's just a life experience plugged into us. So, um, I do feel like if you are experiencing sales anxiety and you are prepared to do the work, then there's no reason why you can't use this process within time to actually overcome it and have a more enjoyable life experience. And if you do that and you take the bull by the horns, then as far as I'm concerned, like that's the outcome that I wanted to achieve by this book as much as anything else. Um, and just want to like acknowledge you for doing the work on that. And I'm if you are struggling with it at all, um, and if you just reach out to me, and I can possibly send you a voice note on like what might be the thing that's that you may be stuck on and help you overcome it. But anyway, that's the intro bit out of the way. So the way that I use, if you read this document, which I'm guessing you probably will do, or if you haven't already, I remember Penn and Teller, which are like, I think they're Canadian or American magic act, and basically you see a magic act on stage and you think, bloody hell, that just cannot be feasibly possible. That's insane. But then they drop the facades, like the front and the sides, and you see underneath the stage and you can see like the mechanisms going on. Okay, that's the way I felt when it came to um, uncovering like the actual process that was causing me to have this sales anxiety. And what I'm going to do today, after I've gone through like the intro pages on this, is I'm going to do my best to do like a visual demonstration of how this process works, because I feel like the written word is okay, but I feel like the just having a visual demo as well. And feel free to watch it a few times, guys, because like I know working with my clients, like we've had to go over it like a good few times before that they actually begin to get that intuitive feel. Ah, right, I get it now. Okay, so that's why I'm doing it as well, so you can get that intuitive feel. Okay, so basically, guys, I'm gonna skim quite over it. Like I'm just highlighted this here for my own benefit. But basically, okay, if you think about it, when you're like a kiddie, like I'm in a coffee shop now and I got all these, beautiful kids around. They're like 3 years old, 4 years old. Like they've just like they're defenseless, right? They're forming in terms of like their growth as a physical human, but then they're growing in terms of their psyche, their ego as well. Now, at certain stages of their life, they're gonna just come across situations which overwhelm like their capacity to deal with situations. All right, and as a result of that, they need to form some sort of coping strategy. So, like, I'm no psychologist. I'm just talking from my own experience, and I can hope you can, see past the fact that, if you are qualified in this field, I'm probably relating to things which are probably in place, but at quite a layman's level. But then, if you think about the ego, it's defenseless, okay, and so something comes along, challenges them, like some sort of shock or trauma or something like that. They have to form like a coping mechanism, and that's very much what happened to me. Okay, and I should hazard to guess, although I haven't really sort of taken a lot of, I've done a lot of deep work to get this document out, but I feel like you could go like you could take it to a lot of other areas of your life as well. I've not done a lot. I've left it as it is because I kind of cracked the code on the big one that was affecting me. But what I'm trying to say is, like, I would just say that our hindrance to go after things in life is probably layers and layers and layers of these mechanisms. And if you're at a stage in your life whereby you're fed up with your life situation and your inhibitions and things like that, um, I would suggest maybe taking a month off, really getting to grips with this mechanism that I've talked about, or understanding the basic mechanism of this that I talk about here, and really look at how in your personal circumstances, these levels, these multiple mechanisms are really sort of causing you to um, restrict yourself from your greatness. Yeah. Apologies in the background. It's Kitty's day at the cafe, and if there's a bit of background noise. So anyway, so yeah, so as an overlayer, basically, as a wee one, you get a shock, a trauma. Now you don't know how to deal with it. You don't like it. You label it as, and this is important, which I'll be touching on later, is that you label it as horrible, terrible, and all the rest of it. And all of a sudden, then you create like a strategy, I suppose, for not wanting to encounter it ever again. Okay, so I didn't really. I'd done some background reading on the work of Frederick Dodson, and he came up with some relevant points about, um, that we're still using tactics in our adult life that are um, very much like constructed in our early years, and they're just playing out in more sophisticated ways. And so knowing that, I intuitively felt like, what's really going on here? I really want to unpick this. And as a result, like if I went down and like I really classified this anxiety that I was feeling. And it was not the case of like a lot of reps will have anxiety about hopping on calls with people and the outcomes of those calls and things like that. I have no fear on getting onto calls with people, but it was a very strange phenomenon for me, and that was that I didn't want to be seen as a failure or fraud in front of the eyes of my peers. Now, basically, like I held, the respect of the people, like in my comrades, like to the effect that I didn't want to necessarily go on sales calls or have my calls reviewed and things like that because I had a hang-ups about being seen as inferior in company of my peers, and that was quite strange, So I tried to get to the bottom of it, and I did some deep work on myself, and I've given instructions on how to do this actually in the program below in this document. But to just cut a long story short, I come from Swansea, hence the dodgy Welsh accent, and I was about 8 to 10 years old. I went to a private school, old school, desks laid out. We were doing our end of term exams, whatever it may be, and I'm quite a creative person. I'm not like uh, more academic type, and I was just sitting there at this desk, completely perplexed about how to like, and I saw my probably more I suppose not intelligent, but a friend of mine who knew the answers to these more like maths questions, and basically I was copying his work. No, I'm not going to hold my hand up, but I was only 8 to 10. You know what I mean? It's we've all done it, right? And basically, my teacher caught me doing it, and she just dragged me over hot coals, and she just made me just feel like dog shit basically, and I was just ostracized. It was paying penance for what I'd done, right? Um, and then so that really sort of kind of knocked the stuffing out of me, and like I was talking about this ego structure that doesn't have a coping mechanism yet. That was kind of like the event that really triggered this one specific structure for me. So returning back 35 years later, I was able to put the pieces together. Okay, that any situation where there's a possibility of a shameful experience. Okay, so let's think about that. I didn't want to have to be seen as that inferior person in front of my new um, circle of friends or community. Okay, so I transcended. Obviously, I'd left school, got on with my life, and all the rest of it. And um, apologies there, just had to break because screaming kids about the place. But I hope you don't. I hope you can still fall in track with the message. Um, so essentially, yeah, I was. I created this instance, I suppose, whereby I have a community of friends and colleagues. When I'm in school, I got shameful, experience because I got caught cheating and ostracized. And that was where the experience, the mechanism was created. Now I'm obviously 35 years later, and my new community is my work colleagues. But then I'm still carrying this mechanism whereby I feel that if there's an experience that's going to make me feel inferior, I don't want to have it, okay? So this is the mechanism. Shameful experience occurred. Don't want it to be repeated. What happens then is I create a radar and subconsciously look for similar experiences emerging where I could possibly be seen as inferior. And I avoid these experiences where possible. And I suspect this is where a lot of people have a lot of fear in their lives. Yeah, because they've had these layers and layers of mechanisms. Okay, and where not possible to avoid this experience, I would basically create like a mitigation strategy. Okay, so that I wouldn't have to feel the full force of this. I perceive to be like a similar experience I had as a child. Okay, so like what I've said here is like it's all well and good, right? If this coping strategy is, if you live in a shoebox, then that's fine. You can abide by this coping strategy. But the thing is, you just want to get on with your life and grow, okay? So you created like this duality where part of you wants to grow and push yourself out your comfort zone and do things, and then part of you saying, don't do it, don't do it. So this mitigation strategy is probably like the key to the castle to understanding how, pervasive and persistent anxiety is really, causes a not a less than optimal life experience for a lot of people, be it sales reps like myself back in the day, or for a lot of people, I'm guessing. Okay, so um, a couple of important points I realized along the way on this journey unpicking this was that what there was no real pain if you think about it, right? And if you look at the other program that I've included here, which is the Tenacious Sales Rep, it's okay to avoid physical pain, like running out of a burning building. But in terms of like the pain to the ego, as we'll call it, or the pain to our like, that non-physical part of us, there is no real pain. So the crux that I realized is that even though it was an overwhelming situation when I was 8 to 10 years old, there was no real pain. Okay, and like if you can understand that, like that's a very significant point. And the pain only comes from our belief that there's pain because of the words that we use to describe it with the labels. Yeah, oh, that's a horrible sensation, that's a terrible sensation, I felt really compromised, or I felt horrible, I felt in shock. Think of all these negative words. Okay, and then we run away from the words, not the experience. Okay, so what I've, in the actual um exercise below, I said, like, what if you re-engage with that emotional experience, that emotional experience you had of, feeling compromised in adult life, and then just really evaluate the feeling, the sensation, and rename it as tickle-ickle. Yeah, just call it tickle-ickle, and it loses its power over you. Okay. So that's a really important point that I realized, that I was just limiting my whole capacity to being my best self by just running away from a physical sensation. And the reason that, like, I'd caused this limit, this physical sensation had its power from the way that I'd labeled it, and I probably labeled it through the eyes of an 8 to 10 year old. Okay, so that gives you. So what I want to invite you to do now is just pause and think of the magnitude of that. We label a sensation and we give it meaning and let it dominate our life. Now, even if we, you know, come up with labels to justify our limitations, so we say, like, oh, and then we just kind of put these macro limitations in place. Oh, I couldn't do that, I'm a nervous person, I'm a shy person. Okay, and then we just create our own limitations in life through our previous life experience and our sort of uninvestigated complexes. Yeah. So basically what I realized then, and this is kind of like I want to explain by way of illustration here today, I'll do my best for you, is that, the so-called negative energy that was being held in my body through anxiety was actually caused by this mitigation strategy, whereby I couldn't go and avoid, being in a situation whereby I was being judged by peers. So this radar that was going out and looking for these experiences to avoid was actually causing all the the constant daily pervasive sense of anxiety. Okay, so just as like an overview, just to talk you through this, is that um, we've got the what we see, we interpret what we see through our physical senses, through our eyes, through our ears and things like that. But we've also got the mental images and mental voices and things like that. Now, there's a part of us that links to our physiology that cannot tell the difference between what we see through our eyes and what we see in our mind. So what we see in our mind is just as powerful to our physiology as as what we see in real life. So if you think of like having some sweeties, like in candy, yeah. If you think of, just going to a sweet shop and seeing that candy, you're going to salivate a little bit, yeah. But if you think about like some real sour candy, you're probably going to salivate as well just by thinking about it. Okay, so that's the power that I'm trying to talk about. What we imagine is real. We can't. There's a part of us that can't tell the difference. Right now, that's an important part of understanding like how this mechanism works. So if you, the way that I describe it is that this this mitigation strategy was actually showing me examples of how I could be um, caught short and shamed, okay, in order for me to sort of be wary of that there could be something coming down the pike. But the very fact that my subconscious was being shown all these potential examples was causing the physiological effect of what I label as anxiety, this physiological response. So I was really, at the end of the day, running away, trying to prevent myself from just a physical experience, which doesn't have any power anyway, which is like the real kicker. But the whole strategy that I have for avoiding just an experience was give me like daily anxiety through the physiological response of how this response was kicking off and affecting my physiology. So in a nutshell, as a nipper, that's UK terms for like being as a child, I was branded a cheat and a fraud, and I developed a mental mechanism to avoid as best I could future situations where it could happen again. Okay, so this pattern just kind of evolved, but the actual mechanics of it, of me being a fraud within a community setting of peers, those hard metrics, those components of the mechanism never changed, although my life situation did. And it was silently running in the background, thinking it was doing me good, but in fact, the actual mitigation strategy was kicking off to the extent where it was detracting me from my ability to take action. Okay, but and as a result, and also causing daily sales anxiety. All right, so that's the kind of guys. I've done my best to explain it. Um, like I said, this is something you probably want to experience for yourselves, and like draw parallels to like your own life, and just take some time to really digest this. Okay, but what I want to do now is I just want to move over and maybe just draw like how this actually plays out. All right, so yeah, that's working. So basically, like here I am, 8 to 10 years of age. All right, okay, and here I am, 40 something. No, honestly, I'm 43. All right. Okay, so there's like the timeline. Okay, so here we go. 8 to 10 years. Okay, I'm branded a cheat. Okay, I don't like that. Like it was an overwhelming experience, and like my ego really didn't like that. It doesn't want to experience it anymore. Okay, and because it was overwhelming, I've labeled it as horrible. So I no longer want to have experience this horrible situation. Okay, it was an overwhelm. I didn't know how to cope with it. Okay, so I created this mechanism. And this mechanism basically has two caveats. Number one, don't take action in front of your peers. Okay, that can make you feel horrible. But as a result, like I can't go through my life just taking no action and having no friends. It's impractical. So what's the next best strategy? It's like mitigation, right? Okay, well, Jimmy, well, if you are going to go off into like your adult, you go on and live your life and run the risk of this happening again. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create this radar, and it's working behind the scenes, and it's looking out for all of these potential experiences where a certain criteria is in play. Okay, and this criteria is okay. You are in a um, peer setting and a circumstances where you can be judged. Okay, because though in those circumstances, there's potential for me to feel this horrible experience, and this horrible experience is no bueno. All right. So basically, what's happening is even all of these years, all right, like this radar's been going off, and it's saying, "Look, Jimmy, there's a situation there. Look, Jimmy, there's a situation there. Look, Jimmy, there's a situation there." Whereby, there's potential for you. Now, as we discussed, all right, this mitigation strategy, it's basically showing my, let's call it my brain. Do you like my brain there? All right. If we like, it's like our consciousness isn't held in our brain, okay? But like I want to just use it so that it's understood. Okay, so it's showing me these experiences of, you know, like showing me these pictures to my brain of, you're in this peer setting now, and this could happen, this is going to be horrible. All right, so even though it's in mind, okay, this is linked to my physiology, okay, and it's the same, it creates the same thing, the same stress response in terms of, hormones, adrenaline, cortisol, that a physical experience would create. So what's happening is, say for example, if we refer back to these potentials, I could have maybe, I'm guessing here, 20, 30, 40 potential radar warnings, creating 20, 30, 40 physiological responses per day. And as a result of that, my hormone levels, my cortisol levels, my stress levels are always up. So how does that play out? Okay, that plays out that my whole life experience is stress because of this mechanism. All right. So basically, like once you undo this mechanism and you start seeing through the facade that all you ever running from is an experience, is a sensation within body, and you start to see with you draw this you see implicitly how this mechanism is playing out in your own life experience, like the Penn and Teller magic trick. You just start to see through it, and then once you start to see through it, and this is the kicker. This is like maybe like the thing that killed it for me, that killed this experience for me, is like you have to have a binary choice there. Okay, like, and I wish I could tell you like when the time is right or exactly how to do this, but you have a binary choice. All right, and choice one is that you live in the mechanism and you have a shit life experience because you're just fucking exhausted all the time because you're just anxious all the time. Or you can choose to step out. All right, and then your life experience becomes good. And this is what really helped me, okay, is that here's a set of railway tracks. Okay, railway tracks 2, 1 and 2. All right, and this is the end of the line, be it the fact that your job finishes, your relationship finishes, whatever your mechanism is. We really have very little control. All right, so there's the train tracks. Now option 1 is that I'm on this train, there's my carriage, and there's the choo-choo train. Option 2 is the carriage, and like I really have very limited control of what happens. I don't, whatever life situation in, it's going to come to an end anyway, because we're all going to die, or we're all going to, like, the jobs, finish up and relationships finish up, and that's just life, all right? I can either just live within this, um, whatever I'm trying to avoid. So, like, what if train? What if my job finishes, right? I can either, kind of just be freaking out all the time, and this railway track is like I'm just running, bouncing off the walls, knocking the carriage left and right, okay, inside this mechanism. Or I can just go along for the ride and I can step out and say, well, I don't really have that much control, so this what if doesn't really make sense anymore. Okay, so I can just go along for the ride and I can be strategic. I can get my whiteboard up. I can evaluate kind of what's going on in front of me, knowing that it's pointless panicking, because either way this situation is going to come to an end, probably by means outside my control anyway. Okay, but there's two options, and either one is I can either just be like a wailing banshee, just trying to control things that are beyond my control. And number two is I can step outside the what if train, and just say, well, what I can do is, like, what in this moment is empower myself to make the best, most strategic decisions, and not let this loop of anxiety from just kick my ass all the time. And that's the kind of revelation that I had. It's like it's up to, once you take ownership of the fact that although it's not your fault that you created um, this negativity loop, this mitigation strategy. It's not your fault, but it is your problem to deal with. And once you realize and you see through it, you can almost like create a mental picture, and you label like how exactly you're doing it and how it's affecting you. You can step through it, and after that, then you personify it, declassify it, depersonalize it as something that's not part of you anymore, and you can step through it. You can be far more strategic and far more empowered. All right, guys. So, like, this is fairly deep work. I'm not going to lie to you. I hope that you got some benefit from it. Like I said, if it's like something that really resonates with you and you're just like stuck on something, don't be afraid to give me like a voice message or something like that. And happy to point to you and help you overcome a wee blocker.